So we're going to be learning, if you don't have a sheet, make sure you have a sheet. We're going to be learning Mizmor of Tehillim that we say on Tish'a BeAb here. It's Mizmor Kuf Lamed Zayin. The earliest source for saying this Mizmor on Tish'a BeAb is Masechet Sofrim, which is a work from the time of Geonim, really. And the Ashkenazim say this Mizmor all year round. At least they're supposed to say this Mizmor all year round before Birkat Hamazon. The reason why they say this Mizmor all year round is because it's really a mourning of Yerushalayim. It's a remembrance of the exile, and in Birkat Hamazon, if you look at the actual text, about half of it, about a third of it is about the food that you just ate, and about 66% of it is about Yerushalayim and Israel and the land. The flip of this Mizmor, the anti-Kuf Lamed Zayin, is actually Kuf Chaf Vav, which is Hayinu Kicholmin, and when Shuvah Hashem Et Shivitenu Ka'afikim B'Negev, and that they say on Shabbat before their Birkat Hamazon. So we're going to be analyzing this Mizmor, and there are two very important readings that you can have from this Mizmor that are pretty much the exact opposite, but at the end of the day have the same core idea. And that's what I want to go through with you today, is to look at this Mizmor as really containing two completely opposite understandings, but really understand what's at the core that is similar, and then really take it to modern day, to Tish'a BeAb. What are we trying to do here? If you're on mute, please mute yourself. No, not if you're on mute. If you're on the Zoom, please mute yourself. Okay, so let us begin. Well, before we begin, this Mizmor is very controversial because the first three words are Al Naharot Bavel, on the rivers of Babel. Now, if you know anything about Jewish history and who we usually ascribe the book of Tehillim to, that doesn't make any sense. David wrote the book of Tehillim, and Al Naharot Bavel is Babylon. David was not really ever in Babylon. So there are different ways to grapple with this issue amongst the Mefarshim, amongst the commentaries. We're not going to deal with that. Who wrote this? It's not our problem. If you want to say it's David and he wrote it Beruach HaKodesh, that's fine. If you want to say it was someone later on and it's just included in the book of Tehillim, that's also fine. It doesn't really matter for our class. They're both of those opinions are viable, and they're both in the earlier commentary. So it doesn't really matter what you say there. The point is what's actually in the words. So we're going to go through once with just one read through. It's important. Tehillim is more than anything. It's not a text. It's a sound. It's a song. You have to hear the words because there's some alliteration. There's some the words themselves evoke emotion. So let's just do one read through and then we'll go back and translate and then we'll explain what's going on. Al Naharot Bavel Sham Yashavnu Gam Bachinu B'Zochrenu Et Zion Al Aravim Betocha Talinu Kinorotenu Ki Sham She'elunu Shovenu Divrei Shir V'Tolelenu Simcha Shiru Lanu Mishir Zion Ech Nashir Et Shir Adonai Al Admat Nechar Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yemini תדבק לשוני לחיקי אם לא אזכרכי אם לא אעלה את ירושלים על ראש שמחתי זכור אדוני לבני אדום את יום ירושלים האומרים ערו ערו עד היסוד בה בת בבל השדודה אשרי שישלם לך את גמולך שגמלת לנו אשרי שיוחז וניתץ את עוללייך אל הסל. So let's go back and translate. If the sheet that you're looking at should not be the sheet with the box. So if you see I broke it down, this is the standard, most traditional way of breaking down this Mizmor, is to break it down into really three sections. The first one is a reflection on the current moment. The second section is a dialogue that's taking place and a response. And the third section is a prayer to God. So if you open it up, it says, Al Naharot Bavel, on the rivers of Babylon. Sham Yashavnu, over there we sat. Gam Bachinu, and we cried. B'Zochrenu Et Zion, as we remembered Zion, Zion, Yerushalayim. Al Aravim Betocha, by the willows in it, meaning by the river. Talinu Kinorotenu, we hung up our lyres, our musical instruments. Kisham she'elunu shovenu divrei shir v'tolelenu simcha. Shiru lanu mishir Sion. Because over there, she'elunu shovenu, our captors asked us, divrei shir, for words of song, v'tolelenu simcha, and to play us some happiness. Shiru lanu mishir Sion. They said, why don't you sing to us of the songs of Zion? So, what's going on here? What is the setting that this is taking place? So, very good. The Jews are clearly in Galut. The Jews are clearly not in Yerushalayim anymore. They're not in Israel. And where are they? They're on the rivers of Babylon. They're on the rivers of Babylon. And what happens there when they get to the rivers of Babylon?
Cry.
They cry. Why are they crying? Because they're remembering the existence that they just had, that they were just in several weeks ago maybe. And while they're reaching their new destination, they cannot be happy. They're crying over the past. And their captors are telling them, perhaps, and probably in this reading of the Mizmor, the Tolalenu is the word that is very cryptic here. None of the Mefarshim really are certain about what it means, which is going to be the word that actually flips the entire Mizmor. But according to some, Tolalenu is related to Teholelenu, which would mean they are mocking them, saying, "Why don't you sing us songs from your homeland?" Now, why do these people in the psalm have lyres with them? Why do they have kinorot with them? So it could be, it's very likely, this is where the Mefarshim go, that these people that are requested to sing are the Levi'im from the Bet HaMikdash. That they were the captors, they were the people being taken captive, and the Babylonians are telling them specifically, why don't you sing us songs that you used to sing in the Bet HaMikdash? To which they respond in Pasuk Dalet, Ech nashir et shir Adonai al admat necha. How can we sing the songs of God on a foreign land? Now the word ech here is like we have it in Megillat Echa. It's not ech, how, like in the sense of how did you get to the mall yesterday? It's a sense of ech as, how is it possible? How is it possible, nashir, that we should sing et shir Hashem al admat necha, on foreign land? The songs that were sung in the Bet HaMikdash, how can we sing them on this foreign land? And now, if you notice, the tense changes. It's no longer plural of nashir, we. It's a singular, and these next two lines are actually oaths. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim. If I forget Yerushalayim, tishkach yemini, let my right hand forget what it does. Meaning what? I should no longer be able to play this harp, this lyre that you want me to play. If I will never play for you, they're saying back to the Babylonians, because if I remember Yerushalayim, I'm not going to play because I'll be too sad. And if I don't remember Yerushalayim, then my hand should forget how to play. Tidbak lishoni lechiki, let my tongue stick to my mouth so I can't sing, so I can't speak. Im lo ezkerechi, if I don't mention, meaning if I, again, the same concept, mentioning is verb. Im lo ezkerechi, im lo a'ale et Yerushalayim al rosh simchati. And this is the oath that doesn't have it only has the beginning clause. If. It doesn't have a closing. It doesn't have a second half. Im lo Yerushalayim, what? Then what? And this is a common technique in the Tanakh when the gravity of the oath on the second half would have been too strong, too difficult of a reality to discuss. You just have one part. If I don't do this, I can't even say what would happen to me. The last part is the tefillah. Zechor Adonai livnei Edom. God, remember the children of Edom. Now, interestingly, Edom here, so for those who learn a lot of Gemara, you'll think that this is a reference to Rome. Mm-hmm. But for those who learn a lot of Tanakh, you'll think that this is a reference to meaning Edom, the nation that's a descendant of Esav that lives on the eastern side of the Jordan River. So it's interesting that it contains both, because the Romans, who are the we'll call it the spiritual descendant of Edom, destroyed the second Bet HaMikdash. But the kavanah here is for the Edom, like we read in the Kinot today, right? The enemies, not the ones that destroyed us, but the enemies that were around us were making fun of us as we were being destroyed. So remember them. At Yom Yerushalayim, the day of Yerushalayim, that it was destroyed, Ha'omrim, that they were saying to the Babylonians, Aru, Aru Adei Yesodva, they were saying, destroy it until there's nothing left. Keep going. And now we turn to Bavel, the actual captors. Bat Bavel HaShiduda, Ashrei she'ishalem lach et gimulech shegamalt lanu. Praiseworthy would be the one. Now this next two lines are very difficult to say. It's the most graphic line in all of Tanakh. Ashrei she'ishalem lach et gimulech shegamalt lanu. Praiseworthy is the person who will pay back to you what you did to us. And the last line is a description of what that means, meaning what they did to us that we're hoping is done back to them. Again, it's a very difficult line. Ashrei she'ochez v'nipetzet olalayich el hasala. Praiseworthy would be the person, or should be the person, who grabs your children and smashes them against a rock. Like I said, it's a very difficult line. Clearly, the person writing this Mizmor is describing something he saw with his own eyes, saying, what I saw with my own eyes, praiseworthy would be the person that does that back to you. Reminds me of a scene from the movie Defiance, if any of you have ever seen that movie, where the partisans in the forest capture a Nazi officer, and they're just beating him up, and as you're watching the movie, you yourself feel a little bit conflicted, because it's hard not to feel mercy for someone who is pleading for his life. At the same time, it's hard not to empathize with the feelings of these people as they themselves were tortured by this very person. So that's how you probably should feel as you read that last line, is feeling a bit of confliction that you're not in this situation, so you don't really know what is being done here. But anyways, the Midrash on this Mizmor. So we just read it. This is the traditional way it's been read. It's the way of a Mizmor that describes the horrible exile, the destruction, and the tauntingness of our enemies towards our state of, destituteness, I guess you would say. I just looked up, by the way, 5 minutes before we started, what the temperature in Iraq is today. Tish'a BeAb, this is when this would be taking place a week after. The temperature in Iraq today is 116 degrees. In Jerusalem, it was 95 degrees. So if they left Yerushalayim, you want to talk about the first death march, right? They left Yerushalayim and are walking towards Babylon. And now they get to the rivers of Babylon. And they don't sit and drink. They don't say, Sham yashavnu shatinu. The first thing they do is cry. They don't sit and eat and drink. They cry. Al Arabim betucha, amongst the lushness of Babylon, the greenery, we hung up our lyres. And there we were mocked. We were mocked by our enemies. And our response to that was, we will never give in. We're going to make an oath that we will never give in to you. Because we will never forget Yerushalayim. The Midrash goes one step further. This is one of the most amazing Midrashim. It's incredible. He says, when we got to the rivers of Babylon, first of all, they say that the Babylonians didn't want to stop along the way, because they said, what happened with the Sancheriv when he tried to destroy the Beit HaMikdash is that the Jews did Teshuvah and he wasn't able to. He could destroy the north, he surrounded the city, and the Jews did Teshuvah, and then he wasn't successful. So we're not going to let them get a chance to do Teshuvah on the way. We're going to bring them all the way to Babylon without any breaks. And then when they stopped on the river, they finally got there, the enemies were satisfied. Sham yashavnu, there, they all sat. They all sat and ate and drank. We were crying, because we were remembering Sion. And our response to their sitting and drinking was, we're going to hang up our instruments. And when they saw that, they came over and said, they mocked us and they said, why don't you, Levi'im, come, we're having a meal right now. Come play some music for us. Why don't you play some of the music you used to play in the Beit HaMikdash? And the Midrash understands, Ech nashir et shir Hashem al admat nechar, not as as how could it be, but as an like we usually use the word which is a how is it possible? Meaning how physically is it possible? And what does the Midrash say that they did? All of the Levi'im looked at each other, gave each other the head nod, they stuck their thumbs in their mouth, and they bit off their thumbs. And they hung up their hands to their enemies and said, how do you want us to sing? We can't sing, we can't play our instruments for you. And Im eshkachech Yerushalayim is an oath by God. That's why it changes tense. It's not the people saying it. It's God saying, because you just did that, you just bit off the thumb of your right hand that you'll never forget Yerushalayim. I also will never forget Yerushalayim, and I will make sure to bring you back. And that's why he changes the tense. That's the Midrash's filling in the setting for this Mizmor, and it takes it to a whole nother level of meaning about the real, just horrible nature of our exile and what we encountered when we were there. And also about the strength of the people who were leaving, about how they were able to maintain their connection to Yerushalayim even as they were being mocked and tormented. Like I said, this is the standard way of reading this Mizmor, and this is the way, it's been understood. I want to do a little bit of a reversal, because I think most of us would relate to this. Not so much today. We're in exile, but it's not that bad. We don't have our own, full autonomy in the state of Israel. We don't have the Bet HaMikdash. We don't have the Sanhedrin. We don't have our whole infrastructure. We still have a lot of issues. So we are in exile, but it's not that bad. Our life here is pretty solid. So how does this Mizmor speak to that? How does this Mizmor speak to that kind of life, to that kind of situation? So now let's read the Mizmor. Turn the page over. Let's read the Mizmor a little bit differently. So here, just so you don't lose track, it goes side to side. So, Al Naharot Bavel, Sham Yashavnu. On the rivers of Babylon, there we sat. Now, rivers throughout Tanakh have a very positive connotation. It's water, it's flowing, it's life. And if you just think of the name of it, Sham Yashavnu, very peaceful. Sham, there, we sat, we dwelled. Yashavnu, we were permanent there. However, Gam Bachinu B'Zochrenu Etem. We also, when we would remember Yerushalayim, we would also cry. Al Aravim B'Tocha, on the willows, which is something that requires, from Sukkot. You don't put that thing in water for 5 seconds; it's going to dry out. So the willows are something that represents something that is only a wealthy country, a very wealthy country with a lot of water, could have willows. And on those willows, Talinu Kinorotenu, so amongst the wealth, amongst the prosperity that we had in Babel, we hung up our lyres. We said that would be inappropriate to be singing, but that's what we did. And now this next line is not a bad line. It's not a mockery. Kisham she'elunu shovenu. She'elunu. They asked us, the people that took us there, asked us, Divrei shir, sing us something. V'tolelenu simcha. Hear the word tolelenu. You could go by one of the other explanations. Tolelenu is, as Rashi says, it's the name of an instrument. Tolelenu simcha. Shiru lanu mishir Zion. Maybe they had a nice multicultural event, right? We're gonna eat Babylonian food, but with a Jerusalem song, right? And they said, why don't you sing us some songs, right? Achashverosh at his party. It's a very multicultural event. He says, why don't you sing us some of the songs? Oh, what did you sing on Wednesdays? What was that song, right? Ech nashir et shir Hashem. And there's always a tension here. There's the comfort, there's the wealth, there's the prosperity of Babylon. And then there's the response of the people, which is, it just doesn't feel right. Ech nashir et shir Hashem al adnat nechar. This song is ours. It belongs to the Bet HaMikdash. It belongs to the land of Israel. How can we do it on a foreign land? And the next part, now you ask yourself, when a person makes a swear, who needs to make a swear about whether or not they're going to do something? Anyone need to make a swear that they're going to brush their teeth tomorrow morning? No, because you're going to do it anyway. Who needs to make a swear? Anyone need to make a swear they're going to eat tomorrow?
People that have issues.
But people need to make a swear that they're going to go on a diet.
But people that need to convince themselves.
People that need to convince themselves not to do something need to make a swear to themselves to make it strong. So the people make a swear not to forget Yerushalayim. What does that tell you? There's a threat to forget Yerushalayim.
It wasn't that bad there.
There's a threat. There's a real threat here. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim. If I forget it, tishkach imini. Tidbak l'shoni lechikim lo eskerechi. Im lo ale Yerushalayim la simchati. That's an oath that someone's making because they're nervous that they're going to forget. They're scared that this new reality that they're in is so comfortable, as Yirmiyahu tells the people when they're going into exile. Why don't you go there, build houses, marry women, marry people, start families, and we know that most of the people did not come back. 90% of the people stayed there. When Ezra led the people back, they did not go with him. Most of the people stayed back. Zechor Hashem livnei Edom et Yom Yerushalayim. Actually, I want to skip that for a second. Notice, though, that even from Pasuk Aleph to Pasuk Dalet, there is a progression. Originally, it's Naharot Bavel. They call it Bavel. It's the new home. But already by Pasuk Dalet, it's Al Admat Nechar. It's already foreign. It's already not ours. It's Bavel, it's not ours though. Now if you skip down to Zayin, let's continue. Zechor Hashem livnei Edom. Remember the day of Edom, remember to the children of Edom, et Yom Yerushalayim, Haomrim aru ad hayesod. But Bavel hashiduda, ashrei sheishalem lach et gimolech shegamalt lanu, ashrei sheyoshpez v'nipetzet olalayich el asala. If you now compare Naharot to Salah, what's a Salah? A dry rock. Not just a sword is like a bowl. Salah is a dry rock. It's the rocks that you find in the desert. So, also, by the way, just parenthetically, Sion is related to the word Siyah, which means dry. It's comparing the dryness of Yerushalayim to the Naharot of Bavel, right? You have the wealth of Bavel, and that is flipping now full circle. Al Naharot Bavel becomes Olalayich El Asala. Why? Because that's what they did to us. So it's nice that we feel comfortable now. But if you want to really, really not forget Yerushalayim, don't forget what these people did to you. Not too far ago, not too long ago. These people that are now your neighbors and your friends, and this is not too long ago. This is what the reality was, and this I think is a little bit more of a relevant reading for us in our situation. This Mizmor is the Mizmor of the Jews of exile. To write a Mizmor that could encapsulate the different, completely, you couldn't get more different than 21st century Brooklyn and the 5 towns, United States, than 13th century Poland and 11th century Russia and 14th century Spain. You can't get more different in terms of the nature of the exile. And yet you have this one Mizmor here that is encapsulating it all, and it is reminding the people, whichever way you go, you have to stay strong. It either needs to be something that'll be with you because you feel it, because there's no way you're going to have anything to do with the guy who's about to lead a pogrom the next week. No. But not only in that situation, where it's easier to really maintain your Jewish identity, to maintain your connection to Yerushalayim, even in a situation where things are good, everyone's friendly, life is okay, everyone's doing things, you still need to do something to maintain your connection to Yerushalayim. And that's really what the modern, I'll call it custom is. What is the modern custom? Imesh kafech Yerushalayim. Al rosh simchati. Anytime you have a happy event, you do remembrance to Yerushalayim. If you build a new house, you leave a piece of that house undone. If you have a wedding, you break an item of value. And the original custom was actually to put ashes on your head.
They say that at Brit Milah.
What?
Imesh kafech.
No, I don't think so. Brit Milah is not as happy as a wedding. Really, it's
right.
The Gemara actually says because the child is in pain. It's not. There's no deeper. It just says
I've had ashes on my head since my wedding.
Yes, you have. His wife's maiden name is Ash. So. So the Gemara says, when discussing the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, is that there were a group of people who said, listen, the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, we're never eating meat anymore. Why? Because there's no korbanot. How can we eat meat? There's no korbanot. So the rabbi said to them, you're not going to drink wine either? used to pour wine on the Mizbeach also. They say, yeah, we're not drinking wine either. They say, you're not going to eat fruits? They brought fruits to the Mizbeach Bikurim. So they said, we're not eating fruits either. So they said, on Sukkot they used to do Nisuch HaMayim. You're not going to drink water? So they said, okay, so what should we do? And the response was, every single time, like I said before, every time you build a house, leave a piece empty. Every time you have a wedding, do a zikaron for Yerushalayim. Because if you do at your most happy occasions, you put a little bit of a damper, you do a little bit of a remembrance to Yerushalayim, it will prevent you from ever really forgetting Yerushalayim. And especially today, where Yerushalayim is not really the way it was for thousands of years. It's a city that's, thank God, it's flourishing and there's economy. Still, we have our issues. As you saw a couple months ago, we have some issues that need to be taken care of. But it's hard to relate to it in the same, sense. But there always needs to be some level of connection to the holy city. Tish'a BeAb.